All right, well, what to do when the appraisal comes in lower than the offer? It's crazy. All right, this is a complicated situation. So let's go all the way back. What is an appraisal? An appraisal is the bank's valuation of your home. Okay, the bank sends out an appraiser. The appraiser spends 15 minutes at the house. And now, frankly, they're doing virtual appraisals. So they'll look at pictures of the house and they will look at comps and use a series of standards to judge and evaluate the value of the house from the bank's perspective. And the bank is basically looking to see what could they sell it for if you default. Okay, so it's not the real value of the house. One thing to remember about the appraisal is it's not the true value of the house. There is no true value of a house. In fact, if you were going to try and define market value or true value of a house, you'd have to admit that the price you offered and the price the seller accepted is the market value of the house. What you offered and they took, that is the very definition by economic standards of the market value of the house. Now, the bank may not disagree with the market value, but they may say, you know what, that market value is something I can't justify with the recent sales. So we're going to be conservative and we're going to say the home is worth less than that. It doesn't mean the home is really worth less than that. It just means the bank's not going to lend you money on it. Okay, so it's important because it's not that you would overpay if you paid the amount you agreed to. You agreed to an amount because you thought the house was worth that. Don't question that. That's what the house is worth. To you, that's what it's worth. Okay, so at the same time, you do need to know what to do if the bank disagrees and can't justify that price. So here's the deal. You got to make up that money. Either the discrepancy, let's just use $500,000 as a sale price of the house, and the bank appraised it at $475,000. Okay, there's a $25,000 gap that needs to be made up. So one of several things needs to happen. Either you need to pony up $25,000 more for a down payment to cover the gap. You're not paying more than you promised. You're just paying more in cash than you thought you would. You're not overpaying. You're paying in cash more than you thought you would. So you could make up the difference. You could ask the seller to lower the price by $25,000. You could do that. Now, if you're using an FHA loan, that appraisal is going to stick with the house. In other words, if the seller disagrees and decides not to lower the price, the next buyer that comes in is going to have to use that appraisal too for 6 months. So you have quite a bit of leverage. If the seller accepted an FHA offer from you, they are really sort of in a market sense bound to lower the price to match. Otherwise you walk away. Very hard to imagine they're going to get $500,000 from anyone else. So you have a good bit of leverage to ask them. Now, if you used a conventional loan, they don't have to lower the price. They could take their chances with another appraisal later coming up, or another buyer that's willing to pay more than the $475,000 you offered. But that's another option, is to have the seller lower the price. Obviously, there's an option called meet in the middle. You pay a little bit more in cash, they lower the price to make up the difference. But that delta needs to be made up for the bank. Now, here's the issue in a market like today, and I'm filming this in March of 2022, super hot sellers market. Sellers are looking up front for either cash offers, which don't need an appraisal. So that whole thing is taken off the table, no bank valuation involved. Or two, a buyer offering additional down payment. A buyer in the beginning of the transaction saying, I'm going to offer you $500,000. And if the bank appraises it low, I'll make up X amount of the difference, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 of the difference. So there's a good chance the seller has already mitigated some of that potential loss at the beginning. But if it got to the end of the transaction, like through the appraisal, and the seller did not demand any additional down payment from you as the buyer, you can either pony up the difference, you could ask the seller to make up the difference, you could negotiate somewhere in between, or you could get out of the deal unless you have waived the finance contingency as part of it getting the offer accepted. If you have a finance contingency and still in place, you can walk away, get your earnest money back. That's where your leverage comes from. which is why the seller would have asked you to waive the financing contingency or they take a cash offer before this stage. But if you walked into this stage and you still have a finance contingency, you got some leverage in the matter. I know it's complex. You can watch this again and take notes. You can call me and ask me how it works. But most importantly, the most important thing is hire a realtor that will explain this to you as you go, because you're going to do this once every 10 years. You're not even expected to remember this. Make sure you hire a realtor that educates, advocates, and negotiates. Those are the three things you need a realtor for. All right, you got questions about this? Let me know. Happy to help you anytime. Aaron Hendon with Christine and Company over at eXp Realty. Talk to you soon.